Welcome to our Made for More podcast. You're here for our Let's Talk series. This is where we get in a lot of different people and hear about their journeys and what it's been like for them with mental ill health. We're going to cover topics such as anorexia, depression, self-image, and OCD. Please be advised that in these topics, they could be sensitive to some people and could be triggering. If this is you, feel free to skip to the next podcast. We have lots of resources on our support page for you, and we have linked below specific organisations where you can go if you need extra support.
Guys, welcome back to our Let's Talk podcast. My name is Ryan. I had the privilege of recently talking with Zara, and actually I'm really excited for today that you're joining us because now we have Zara sat in the opposite seat. It's quite uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's pretty
I've
vulnerable
given you the power and I don't know if I like it.
I
want to take it back.
I feel powerful. No, seriously, thank you so much for coming in and
to
sharing
your
with
podcast.
us. Thanks for coming into my podcast. And being here. No, you are. I've learned actually so much from you in this because of your story, what you're going to share a little bit today, and I'm actually really excited for people to hear from you about this. So, can you just share with us your journey with OCD, what we're going to be talking about today, and kind of how it's impacted you?
I think I didn't, to be honest, actually even know that I had OCD until much, much later. So my first ever kind of, as I always just thought I had anxiety. So I always thought I had panic attacks. I always just think I had heightened anxiety, but I had no language to what OCD was. I mean, I wasn't a teenager like years and years and years ago, but when I was a teenager, mental ill health wasn't really talked about.
Right.
Even to say you had anxiety, no one said that. Like that, it was not a thing.
Yeah.
No. So for me, I was kind of hearing the different things around anxiety when I kind of Google searched some of the things that I was feeling.
Right.
But I didn't actually know that was what I had.
Right.
Even probably medically speaking, when I would be in contact with the doctor, I didn't even still know that it was anxiety that I had. Never mind my OCD tendencies as well.
Wow.
That kind of never even came into it.
Right.
So you can understand how it would be if you didn't even know you had OCD. If you don't know you have something, how do you treat it?
Yeah.
And how do you even navigate trying to heal from it? How do you navigate trying to get better from it?
Yeah.
So I think that's only as I look back, I realize that there's actually language that I didn't have. So it's actually been more healing, to be honest, since I have done counsellor training myself and learned about OCD. I've actually healed a lot more.
Wow.
Even than I realised I had to go. I thought I was kind of finished on the healing journey, but I realised that there was a long way probably for me to go and a lot more I could be doing. So I think for me, looking back, OCD, my first thing I can remember doing was when I was 8 years old, checking the taps at my nanny's house. So I would check the taps and check the taps and check the taps. And then I would think, they're not off, even though I knew the tap was off.
Wow.
So what happens with OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder, it's these like thought patterns. So like kind of like negative automatic thoughts, we call them. And these thought patterns are learned behavior. You're not born with them. So my thought pattern on everything was, so with the tap, for example, I'm going to leave the tap on and then I'm going to go home and my nanny is going to drown.
Wow.
And so that was at 8 years old. That was my deep thought pattern. And these grow and grow. So what happens with OCD? It starts with checking a tap or maybe a light switch or checking that your straighteners are on and off. And all of those things now, to be honest, they're a very... And for some people, that's where their OCD will be beginning, and that's what they'll start to notice. I mean, I even hear just people like say to me about, oh, I've had to start taking pictures of myself locking the car so that I know that I've done that. And they just say it, as they were maybe scrolling through, looking at something on their phone, and they're like, oh, that's a picture of my car being locked. I do that so that I know I've definitely locked the car. I would have to go back and check numerous times. And in my head, I'm like, you have OCD, like you actually don't need to live like that.
Right.
You're living confined, you're living not in freedom, you're living this small life confined by having to take photos. And I don't think people even know, I didn't personally know that I didn't have to live like that there was another way.
That's massive, I think, isn't it? Like to be able to identify, to say, well, like you're saying, there's no language to it.
Yeah.
So you didn't even know there was another way of living.
No.
Right. So
No.
and you're seeing these symptoms and thinking what, like everybody else is probably like this, or I'm the only one like this.
I'm thinking I'm the only person. So for me, I'd heard of OCD, do you know, hand washing?
Yeah.
So it was very much, and a lot of OCD that people would probably have heard about is I need to wash my hands multiple times so I don't get sick. That's a
Right.
very common OCD, and probably the one that is portrayed the most. But that I didn't have that at all. That wasn't my symptoms. So there's actually so many different symptoms how OCD can play out in your life.
Right.
But what happens is that those thoughts just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and they're all protection. So it's some sort of like, it's my way of protecting myself and my family. So I think it's strange because with OCD thinking, so with anxiety, it was all about me. With anxiety, it was keeping myself safe. These OCD thought patterns were keeping other people safe from things that I was going to do.
Wow.
So for example, how the thought patterns continued, and the worst thing that I probably did in the whole thing of it was I didn't tell anyone.
Right.
So for me, as you know, because you know me, I am very type A personality. I have things together. I like to be kind of in control of things. I like to think that I like achieve things and success is important to me. Like, so all of these things. So I am this person, I am Zara over here. It was, I described myself as two people. So Zara was over here on one side, and then I had another person that looked the same as Zara, but was, I saw, weak, couldn't control anything, couldn't even get up out of bed, literally couldn't even go into Tesco, couldn't drive a car, couldn't have a normal conversation. And the two people just didn't line up. So I saw my mental health, I saw OCD as weakness.
Wow.
So because it was weak to me, I didn't tell anyone that I had it.
Yeah.
And so I lived this very lonely, isolated life. And because I didn't also, as I've said, I didn't have language as well. So, you know, had I been a teenager now with the language that they have, a lot of them, even the work that we do going into schools, giving kids language for what they might be going through, it might have looked very different for me. However, I was so ashamed of what was going through my head. I'm like, I can't even control my own mind. Like, what is going on? And I was so ashamed of myself and felt so guilty. You know, I could see what it was doing to my parents. I could see what it was doing. Then I got married to my husband. I could see the life that I was creating, and it was so small. Like, my life was literally so small to a stage where I ended up, my life was like the four walls of our house.
Right.
Because the thought patterns grew and grew and grew, and it started to be a thing with fire. And I have no idea where this came from, but I used to think that everything I touched was going to go on fire, and then I would just kill everyone that was around me. So I couldn't even go into Tesco because I would have thought if I touched something in Tesco, it was going to go on fire and burn the whole of Tesco down. And I would do that to people. If I used to not be able to like walk on the road because I would have thought that, you know, if I walked, so if I was walking up the street, I used to thought that I've just killed the person beside me because the road will turn into fire and I will kill the people on the road. So I couldn't leave my house because I thought I was such a danger to everybody else. And I genuinely thought I was going to live like that forever. And the thought patterns were just getting, so it started with the tap and they just got more and more and more. And the more enclosed and more enclosed, more enclosed, until I ended up, I literally just couldn't even leave my house because the fear of what I could do or what was going to happen was just too much. You know, even whenever I was driving a car, I couldn't drive my car anymore because I would have gone over like a tiny bump and I would have thought like I killed someone. Like, I've definitely just killed someone. That's what I've done. And I look back now and I can't even like remember what that was like. Like, I find it really difficult to be in that space because I'm like, whenever you kind of come out of those thought patterns, it's like, how did I live that long thinking that that was like the way I had to live? Like, but I thought that I was like imprisoned. And then I got to a stage where from a kind of an explosive moment in New York that happened, I realized I got to a space where I was like, I need help because so I just got to a stage where I was like, I can't live like this. I can't do this to my husband any longer. We live this small life and we love adventure, but like we're having to live so small. I'm putting so much on him around like the friends around me. So I just went and got counselling for the first time.
Right. And just as you're saying that, so as you're talking about like, you know, sometimes we may have erratic thoughts or a spontaneous thought and be like, that's just me. You're genuinely believe like this is to the point where then, and what you're saying is it I love the language you use. It started to hinder your life, so your life became smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
So recognizing is this impacting me so much that it's altering my life?
Yeah.
Is one of the key things to notice.
Your daily life.
Totally, right? That process then of starting to talk about it, what was that like? Like how did you start to get to where you maybe are today or start to learn
I mean,
how to live
I
with it?
used to just hope that I would wake up with a brain transplant. Like that was my hope, because I didn't, like, honestly, even on TV, I would hear specialists just say, you know, OCD, you're going to have that forever. So in my head, I'm like, I cannot live like this forever. Like I can't like hardly go another day like this. Like I am literally in a prison. Like this isn't life. Like I'm not living a life. But I also had that other side where I was like, I can't tell people what's going on. Like if I told people what's going through my head right now, because as you're saying, it wasn't like I don't know if you ever played that game, like whenever you were younger, like imagine if, like what would you do if I, and then like you said something completely crazy and you both laughed, and it's like the chances or the odds of you doing it are so low. But actually, for those things, it was so I would literally, so the news would be on in the mornings and I would watch the news in the morning. And so we lived in East Belfast, and I would hear of a car crash in Newry, and I would be convulsively crying to my husband that I had killed that person in Newry. And I would genuinely, and my husband's like, Zara, you have not been to Newry. Like I think I went once when I was like 5.
Yeah, Newry's a great place.
It's a great place. And he would, you know, he was like, Zara, you haven't killed a person. And I would make us drive to places like scenes where these things happen, so that I could just be proven to myself that I actually didn't kill that person.
So you would go and drive, you drive to Newry
I would
to
make
make
him
sure.
do it. I would make Mark drive. Yeah.
And what's he saying to you this? Like how?
Well, like I mean, what do you like do to that?
Yeah.
Like he's doing what he thought was best for me, in the sense of and whenever then I started my counselling process, we realized that actually he enabled me a lot on the journey.
Right.
And you think like he thought it was out of love, and then your enablers are nearly, they take the hit, because it's like, you shouldn't be doing that. You're actually enabling this behavior. But out of love, like what else do you do?
Oh, totally.
So I think in my process of getting better, and for people listening to this, I went to counselling. It was the only way, and I needed cognitive behavioural therapy. I needed to retrain my thoughts, and I didn't realise that was possible, and it's 100% possible.
Wow.
So for anyone who has these thoughts, I don't think, and I haven't shared all the thoughts that I have, so I don't know that there's many people who would have it a lot worse than I did. So if you're here and you're struggling with OCD, go and see someone, because you can get better.
Wow.
Like you don't have to live like that. Like I literally, like Mark and I, like my husband and I, laugh at what we used to have to do, because it's such a different world to what we're living in now. Like I honestly can't even believe it. But I went to counselling, and it was the first time that I'd told anyone, bar my husband, everything that is going through my head. And I went into counselling. This is the most powerful moment for me in my journey. So I walk in, I didn't even take off my coat, didn't set down my handbag.
Didn't want to be there.
He didn't want to be there, but I knew there was something, because I'd started to realize I can't live like this.
Right.
I can't, like, I think I might need help. And then I think back now, of course I needed help. I was like, what?
But that to me is so, it just shows you how in it you can be that.
You're just believing all these lies.
Totally.
Like you're so ruled by the lies that are over your mind, as if like this is you forever. And I just thought, well, this is my life. Like everyone has their thing. This is mine.
Wow.
And so I went into counselling anyway, and I sat down. I'd never met this woman before, obviously. And I just went in and sat down with my coat on, my bag on my knee, and I literally like verbally diarrheaed from 8 years old till then.
Wow. Everything
that I'd been through, all the thoughts that I believe in, everything. And I was just like, oh my goodness, she's gonna just tell me that she's like not qualified to deal with me. And looking back as a counsellor now, like I can see it was pretty overwhelming for her on session 1, the verbal diarrhea that was coming out. So basically I sat down and I told her everything. When I'd finished, she put down her notepad and her pen and took off her glasses and just looked me like straight in the eyes. And she said to me, Zara, I am so sorry that you have had to live this way for so long. You don't need to do that. And if you'll work with me together, we will get you better.
Wow.
And something in me in that moment. So I went in, right? And I felt like this small ant. Okay. So in my personality as Zara, like right now as I'm sitting, which I still was some of the time, and I still, that girl was still there. I felt like not a small ant. But OCD and anxiety made me feel like this tiny ant, like that I couldn't do anything. I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of the whole world. And I went in looking like this ant. And then as soon as she said that, something in me broke. And I was like, how dare OCD try to keep me down for so long? Like, why? And I needed to just fight back. So something in me broke in that moment, and something in me rose up that was like, I need to fight this. And then I started my journey of actually getting better, I think.
That's healing. How long was that journey?
It was, so whenever I actually started counselling, I was told that I'd probably, normally you're kind of given like a 6-week block. She was like, whenever I kind of did my brief, it was like, you'll probably be here for a long time, is the reality.
I'll be a 6-weeker in and out.
Yeah,
nah.
But actually, so it was probably looking like a couple of years, so I would have been on the journey for. However, 3 months later, I never saw her again.
Wow.
And it was just something in me as soon as I started to fight and get the tools. And that was the thing. And I would have to say, when I get into high stress, so I know for me, when I start to get stressful, even now today, I'll start to check a light switch. I'll walk out of a room and be like, did I turn that off? And when I start to do that now, I say to my husband, here, I'm starting to check a light switch. I need to do something to myself to lower my stress. I've taken on too much. There's too much going on with me.
Right.
I'm at a level of anxiety. So what I would say with counselling is it gave me the tools to be able to fight those thoughts. It gave me the tools to be able to say, okay, I'm going through that, but I actually maybe need to catch that.
Yeah.
So definitely it was a couple of months later, and every week I had to do something. Like one of my things was I had to go just walk into Tesco. So cognitive behavioral therapy, you do exposure each week. So one time it was walk into Tesco. Then the next week it was walk in and touch something. Next week it would be go in and buy something. And I wouldn't say it was not smooth sailing the whole time. I had my husband's waiting outside in the car. Some days I would come out and be like, I did it. Some days I would come out with the most random stuff. And Mark's like, why did you buy that random sauce? I'm like, because I touched it and we needed to buy it. So we used to laugh. We had these random products sitting in our cupboard of and it was just on my healing journey. It was just there. Products that we're never going to use. But I'm like, I touched it because so did on fire. So we needed to buy it.
Right.
But then some days I was just able to do it. And then I just kept doing it until I was able to do it, and actually the person that I was a distant memory, but it was painful and I had to work really, really hard. I didn't just arrive at counselling, decide I wanted to get better and I was better. It was really hard. It was the hardest I've worked at anything in my life. But I could do it.
Yeah, it actually, I think you give a lot of people hope. And if something Zara has said today, if you want more information, we have so many resources on our website that we would love for you to start to talk to somebody, just like we are talking here. If you relate to Zara's story, please do. As what I'm hearing you say, there is help. That
Absolutely.
You don't have to live in that forever. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
If you've been enjoying our series, our Let's Talk series, please leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And we will see you guys
for
next
Ryan's
week.
podcast.
Am I next week?
Ryan's podcast next. No, you're not next week. You're not on next week.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to our Made for More podcast on our Let's Talk series. We hope you enjoyed today and we hope you got a lot out of it. Please let us know what you think. We love hearing from you. Just a reminder that this is not a medical podcast. So if you're struggling with mental ill health, please contact your GP or use one of our links below for extra support.